Remember, the 5th of November. Crap, I should have done this earlier in the month. Hey there, folks. This is a Patreon-sponsored review, and one that I am rather happy to get to do. So I got commissioned to take a more thorough look at the film adaptation of V for Vendetta. Now, I've actually talked about this film before, twice in fact, but only in pretty narrow capacity. A scene from it, or a segment rather, came up in a list that I did elsewhere. I'm not going to say what that list was, because that'll reveal too much early on. And also, there's a scene that came up on a nitpick rant. And I'll point those out as I get to them. Also, before I get into this, I will point out that I have not read the original work in its entirety. Alan Moore, I feel, at his best, is an excellent comic book writer. However, he can be just a lot. And I'm not always in the mood for his particular brand. So I've read bits towards the front of it, and I do own it, but I haven't read all of it. So this is my view strictly of the film, and I am not going to be judging it as an adaptation or taking it to task for any of those kinds of changes. So if you take issue with the film because of what was changed, cool, just realize I ain't gonna bring that up. So anyways, I remember going to the theater to this one. I felt empowered coming out of this. And that's saying something. There are lots of things that I'm used to feeling coming out of films. You know, energized, drained, amused. If it's a really good comedy, maybe my cheeks hurt a bit. But there are some things that only a handful of films have made me feel. Wonder, triumph, powerful. This movie made me feel powerful because the way that it delivers its message that power is found in the people who make a stand, and it doesn't even necessarily matter who they are. And that collectively we do matter, which is the note that it very much ends on. I still enjoy that message, and I sure as heck connected to it when this thing came out originally. I think easily the scene stealer here is Hugo Weaving as V. The amount that he is able to bring to a part where he has no face. And it's not even like it's an equivalent to voice acting, because, you know, even a voice actor for like an animation part or whatever, it won't be their face, but there will be a face emoting, bringing across, you know, what the vocalization implies. None of that. No face. And he delivers such a perfectly rounded and engaging character. It's phenomenal. And I'm really glad they never show his face. I'm so glad they never did that. But it really is astounding. And hats off to him for for not just doing the voice work, for being on set in a mask when it could have just been a stuntman or a stand-in for the entire shoot. Audience never would have known. Oh, it's really good. And then we've got Natalie Portman. This, I think, is one of her best performances. I put this up there with Black Swan and The Professional. First of all, at least to my American ears, the accent seems pretty good. Fools me. I don't notice that it's not her accent pretty much immediately. She does a really good job of giving believable layers to someone who can see what V is trying to go for and can maybe even empathize with him a bit, but is also completely put off and scared by everything going on around her. The journey she goes through from the beginning to the end, and how her experiences transform her, I find to be incredibly believable and incredibly human. Some other standouts, Stephen Fry is great. The detectives are great. Honestly, the entire cast, John Hurt, oh man, he was so good being this angry, petty man at the top of the pile. Oh, he was good. Like everybody, the entire cast is phenomenal. Everybody is really good at delivering what it is they are here to do. And I was almost going to say it's not easy to make what is effectively a terrorist heroic. Except I'm not sure that's true. I think it actually could be very easy depending on who it is they're taking acts of terror against and how charming you choose to make them. Here's what I'll say. It's not easy to make a terrorist someone you would root for while at the same time not sugarcoating what it is they do or what they're like. Which I don't feel this did overly. You know, V is violent and vicious and potentially damaging the very society he's trying to break free. You know, he may very well believe, and the film may ultimately bear out that he appears to be right about what he's doing in his goals and how he's going about it. But especially early on, there is the distinct possibility that he is making it worse because the crackdowns that are going on. And that gets exemplified later on with what goes on with kind of the montage of the young girl who spray paints his symbol and gets gunned down in the street. I don't think that was any part of V's master plan that would happen. He probably knew it was possible, though. And that's a heavy thing to deal with. And also, you have to think about what he put Evie through. And again, he may justify that and rationalize it, but that freaking harsh. And I feel like the film is just judgmental enough towards him and the way he goes about what he's doing. He is the hero, and the film is on his side, but I think there's enough sort of holding back and not giving total endorsement from start to finish, enough moments of doubt, enough dips in like, is this really the way this needs to happen? Moments across the film that makes it not just going, yeah, blowing up buildings is great! Which, I mean, I suppose some people could take it that way, but I feel like it pulls back just enough so that it's not coming across like that. So I alluded to having brought up a couple of scenes, a couple of segments of the film before. So the one that I brought up in the nitpick rant is the one scene that I do not like, and if I had the power, I would excise from the film. And it's about the only thing I would change about the film. And that is the Rookwood scene. This is the scene where the investigators trying to track down V and figure out what the heck is going on and why. They get wind of someone named Rookwood who, you know, keeps to himself, but he reaches out and contacts them, and he won't let them come close, stays to shadows, and he tells them about some of the details of how this government came to power. Now, there's two things I really don't like about this scene. One, I think it's painfully obvious that is V in a different mask. You know, a semi-convincing latex mask. Partly because he talks for so dang long, you pick up Hugo Weaving's voice after a bit. So that gets blown way too early by my estimation. But two, and more vitally, none of this is information that's worth stopping the story dead for. Basically, everything that gets said and communicated to the audience in this scene is all stuff that we already knew or had enough of the pieces that we could easily infer. We certainly knew that the government did this type of thing to get into power. But even if we didn't know that exactly, we've seen the way that they wield power. And so exactly how they got there, and whether they tricked the public or manufactured a crisis to get themselves into power, honestly, is kind of irrelevant, because how they wield power now is enough of a reason that they need to be toppled, regardless of how they got to power in the first place. So the fact that the film devotes as many minutes of its runtime as it does for an exposition dump that doesn't actually give us any substantively different information, and what little new information we get isn't necessary to justify anything that's going on plot-wise, chuck it. It's completely redundant and unnecessary storytelling-wise. That scene shouldn't be in there. The other scene that I've talked about before is it's the scene of Evie in this cell, and she starts getting little notes, little communications through this crack in the wall from a woman on the other side. And that woman is telling her story. The story of her life, her love, and the destruction of all of it by the current powers that be. And the list that I put this segment in was a video that I did talking about movie scenes that always make me cry. Yeah, that one hits me really hard for a lot of reasons. One, because the story she relays is very sad. She was just a woman, and at one point a young girl, trying to figure out herself based around the fact that she felt a pull towards other women. Meeting a woman, falling in love, watching the world turn against them, having her wife disappear, being black-bagged herself. But what truly breaks my heart about this scene isn't what it is describing, but it's why she's telling anyone. Because this is just her reality, this is just her history, but she's pushing these notes through a crack in the wall, not knowing who's on the other side, not even knowing for certain if there is someone on the other side. But because someone has to know. Someone has to know that someone has to at least have the possibility of finding and hearing the fact that she was here. She was a person. And she was reduced to something much lower than that. Somebody has to know what is going on, even if that person has no power to do anything about it. And the fact that it ultimately gets revealed that V is the one pushing those notes through the other side doesn't completely wreck it, because he reveals that these stories and these notes were provided to him. He basically was in Evie's place, in a different position, a different location, so that doesn't wreck it for me at all. That scene is so powerful in terms of relaying in short order the devastation, the life-breaking impact of persecution and bigotry because a woman loved another woman. I think that scene's amazing. I think the movie as a whole is amazing. I think Hugo Weaving and Natalie Portman have terrific chemistry. She's actually got really good chemistry with pretty much everyone she communicates with, when she's sitting down with Stephen Fry, when she's talking with the cops, with the investigators. And I really do enjoy the investigators. Those actors are very good as well, which which is good because that could have been a slog all the way through. As it stands, it's only the Rookwood scene that's a slog, but the rest of their stuff is really interesting. I like watching them trying to piece together what's going on with V. I know some people are critical of the action scenes. I think a lot of this largely has to do with it being more actioned up versus the original work, and obviously I can't speak to that. I will say that the last sort of major action set piece when V takes down Creedy's men is ridiculous in terms of what is shown and in terms of some of the visualization, the way the blood splatter is done, and some of the sound effects are ridiculous. They're almost cartoonish. I'm not going to deny any of that, but I'm also going to say I don't care. Because the lead-in is V confronting these men, Creedy saying, "We've got guns," and he just goes, "No, what you have is bullets, and the hope that when you're done firing them, I'm no longer standing." And I'm like, oh, that's so badass. And then we go through this ridiculous action scene, which I know is ridiculous, but I don't care because we let in with that, and it ends with him with his hands on Creedy's neck, and Creedy asks me, "Why won't you die?" And he says, "Because underneath this mask is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. I don't care how cheesy it is. This film earned it, as far as I'm concerned." Is that cheesy? Yes. Don't care. I love it. I really enjoy the rallying cry of this movie. This notion of, when something's wrong, you have to do something. I find this film energizing. And I think one of the things I like about it is it feels righteous and empowering in a way that does not necessarily demand a violent response. Because while V himself has made the decision to employ violence and explosions to make his point, I think ultimately the note that it ends on is much more, if we make them hear us, then we are mighty. Not necessarily blow that up. Maybe that's me trying to square a circle so that I don't have to cop to a film I really like possibly being read as an endorsement of violent action. But I do think enough about the presentation and showing the value of all the people who aren't V and what they do does a lot to keep that in line and keep that in check. Because, the people who march don't slaughter the police presence. They just keep marching. V relies on violence, but the other people don't have to, and it's them we end with. So I feel that helps balance what otherwise could have been a very problematic message. Maybe other people still find it problematic, and I'm not necessarily sure I can argue against that, but there you go. V for Vendetta. I still haven't read the graphic novel. I should, but I do really love this movie. I think it looks great. I think it's paced great. I think the acting's phenomenal. I love the heck out of this. Have you rewatched it lately? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Bunch of stuff to do as well. Buttons, links, merch, subscribe, Patreon. It's all down there. Click on stuff. It'll take you places. Or don't. I'm not running a fascist government. I'm not going to tell you what you have to do. You make your own decisions. Because you are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.